Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Paul. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ben. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. Well, Paul, before we dive into the subject and the content for today, let's get to know you. A couple things I love to ask. What do you love about content and marketing? And tell us a little bit about your background so we can get to know you.
Yeah, well, what I love about content marketing is it's like one of those few business crafts where you really get to kind of highlight, the innate storytelling that I think as humans we all either like gravitate to or, get inspired by, or in my case, in your case, that is our profession, is storytelling. And I've been in marketing for coming up on about 10 years here, and I've had some past work in the agency scene. I've done a little work on the nonprofit side, and now I'm in-house for a company called 811 Group. They're the parent company for three different consulting and professional service organizations.
And what you just said there about where you work is going to be like really good and really relevant to what we're talking about today. I'm really excited about it. And it's creating content for all of your audiences. Now, this is something, I'll be honest, I have struggled with in my career. I worked for a business where we were targeting a very specific group of people, dentists. And then all of a sudden you throw optometrists or healthcare professionals in different areas. And now there's this confusion about where should I talk to these people? How do I segment better? How do I create the right kind of content? When is it universal? When is it targeted? All that kind of stuff. So I've always kind of had questions, and I'm always interested to hear more and more about what other people are doing. So Paul, to kick this off, what are your thoughts on this? How do you really focus on creating content for all your audiences? How do we start to think about this?
As the age-old adage goes, any marketing should start by identifying your audience. Who is it you want to engage, what platform you want to engage, and then, like you said, how do you speak their language? And when you see those technical skills, just like dentistry, just like IT, you got to know the jargon, because if you're not using the jargon, they will not read your message and it won't stick. I think the most important, if I had to sum it up to one thing, it would be less is more. And in that case, kind of like, hey, we all want to do as much as we can, all the different platforms. But as we're going to highlight, that may not be the best case. We all want to let's get as much people as we can in this one piece of collateral or this one campaign. And again, you're probably going to have a lot more success if you target to a specific audience. And that's okay if that audience, like you kind of mentioned, is like, oh, orthodontist, but not dentist in general, and that is a hard pill to swallow, especially as you're like looking at the cost benefit. Hopefully, as I've experienced it in my career and as others can attest, those targeted campaigns will always be the biggest return.
I think that's super cool. The targeted, very specific methodology makes a lot of sense. So you're talking about two different levers that I think sometimes we don't focus on entirely enough. Really on the platform side of things, and then the audience side of things. So we talked about getting to the right person, finding them on the right platform. How do we really create content for the platform and the audience and really weigh that out in our marketing and content efforts?
Yeah, of course. So what I want to do first is probably address that platform question. It's probably the easiest way. Essentially, with the platforms, say we take, a case study of this was we helped out with the client. Maybe they're a retail customer and they want to launch a new app where you can shop online on their app. So, we build out a team of engineers and testers, both for the front end and the back end, and we deliver that app for them. So how do we share that success story? My team, I've got a great internal house team here. Both I've got a social side and then also a general kind of like media side, much more like creating podcasts, creating videos for the web. So let's take the most common platforms that we find ourselves working on is our website, LinkedIn, and then Instagram. So we take that case study, and just for fun, let's throw in the old traditional, sales leave behind. So step one, we take that case study, we build it out in a nice one-pager for our sales reps to take and give to other, potential clients to kind of highlight the success. That's just step one. Step two, good, better, best, right? Is let's make a story about it. We talked about content is all about the story. It's about the people. What if we take a blog or an insights piece that we host on our website and, give the more detail of like, oh, here's some setbacks that we had to overcome, really paint that story and take the viewer through that whole process.
And I love that you're talking about a very, this isn't generic ChatGPT stuff. I love how you're focusing on this is our experience. And I just wanted to call that out because that makes such a big difference now more than ever. So I love that that's like inertly like, this is how we feel, think, look at this, and it makes a big difference. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that's such a big deal nowadays. I love that.
It is a big deal. And even more is like the same way that like people are using AI to get better at how they create content. These platforms are using AI and kind of changing their kind of SEO policies to almost kind of weed out for that stuff. So I'm not saying don't use it. Any technology I would welcome to any field. That's just how progression works. But is your story going to do better if you just use that standard ChatGPT template for everything, or do you have to take the time, even if you start with that kind of write up? Again, what we're talking about today, how do you transition that for the different platforms and the different ways people receive your message? And that's really one thing that I always kind of highlight is like, hey, not everybody likes to read. So we got the blog story, we've got the case study, but what if someone doesn't like to read? And keep in mind, we've got Instagram, that third platform I haven't even, kind of mentioned for our good, better, best program. And that's where I would say the best kind of works in. And that's, let's get these consultants, get these, hiring managers that actually were in on the process. They got to experience our organization services, our personal sell, and really kind of like those little details that really make the difference between a partnership and a vendor. And what if we can get that on video or on audio, and now we're sharing it on Instagram? So if we do a quick run through, I've got my blog post that's, for the readers like myself to, stumble upon through, search engine SEO or boost our actual website traffic. Then bada boom, bada bing, you don't like to read. I've got a video or a podcast for you as well. And even better is instead of just having one generic kind of like piece of content for all of those, by tailoring the content to not only the audience, but also the platform that we plan to release it on, we're only going to be boosting our SEO rankings and kind of like the success of that on those platforms.
For me, I have a personal example of this because I think this is such a cool way of looking at it and really caring about the end user and their preferences, not just, well, we want it to be an SEO post and, that's what we're going to do. I have young children. You can probably hear them in the background, and unashamedly, that's just a part of my life. And I love it. And it's a part of all of it, but I love to read. but I, because of children, can't sit down and just read a book. It has to be on my headphones through Audible. And that is 100% how I consume my content. So podcasts, things like that, it is hard for me to take the time, unless it's work related, to sit down and read a piece of material. But if I can listen to it, then I can, I can be out doing dishes or doing whatever with the family and get some of that content, or in a car. So I think that there's something really cool about that, like really playing with the different formats, and you're targeting the platforms and their positives and the audiences and their different takes. It's really cool how you really focus on the different segments and what they really care about. Ultimately, how they want to consume content. You're really just taking that and putting it at the heart of it. I think that your approach to platform is so valuable. I think a lot of people don't actually focus that on, as much as they should. What are some things you found that's made it easier to really enhance that experience on multiple platforms? Because some people are really intimidated about, how do I create it in all these different formats? What's the cost going to look like? How do you look at that? And how have you built a machine that can actually do that? Because I think some people are limited to words only. How do you build that machine?
Yeah. Again, you're hitting me with these great compounding questions here, Ben. I think we all kind of experience the trouble of like, oh, how do I do more with less, especially in marketing and especially in the content realm. And I think that is kind of where I go back to less is more. Find your niche. Like we were just kind of talking about this earlier before we started recording of one of our companies, MetaSource. They do everything healthcare, healthcare IT, nursing, stuff like that. And one of the big challenges for them is, we're professional services. LinkedIn is kind of where we do a lot of our content. And when we switch to nursing, and focusing on attracting these nursing applicants, consultants, stuff like that, we realize they are not on LinkedIn. They are primarily on Facebook and some of these more as a content person, you would be like, oh no, that's a social site. Like, of course, I wouldn't use that for business to business. And that really highlights hey, you need to know your lane and stick to it, because as much as I'm sitting here preaching, do it every way, make sure you have account for all the different audiences. If your audience is not using a platform, cut it off the list. That was X, or formerly known as Twitter. That was one company we kind of had to remove ourselves from, purely from a bandwidth and cost analysis of hey, we don't have the bandwidth to give these daily updates. We don't have the return or the LinkedIn kind of lead generation to justify that. So what can we do now that we know that people are there, we know we're getting lead generation from it, and we know we just have a time for that? And that's what I would say is definitely the first step for anything like that. The second step is accepting that this is a process. Life is a process, and it does not have to be perfect, especially in the name of content game. I've seen a lot of what our in-house designers would describe as elementary level designs blow up on all sorts of different kind of mediums and platforms, strictly because they had the right timing, they had the right positioning, and that's all that mattered, not, their skill sets. And that's what I would say is don't be afraid to get into. There's a lot of good free software, both from the design element, if you're looking to get some graphics for some of those more visual focused platforms like Instagram and Facebook. And then also, if you're in the mood for video or recording, we are at a great age in radio history where all you need is a mic and a laptop, and you can get a podcast started, as I'm sure you can attest, right? So it really is just hyper in on your game plan and take it one step at a time, and notice that your skills will build on each other, and any sort of brand development is going to be taking time to build on itself. best time to start is now.
So many good nuggets from there. The ability to focus on the quality of the content as opposed to the quality of the production, I think is really, really valuable. The ability to understand where your audience is at and how to approach them and to really focus on building the machine over time. And I love like the ability to say no, to say, hey, these are platforms that we really, maybe we could get a return, but we just don't have the time, energy, and or resources to be able to invest in it. Let's let that stay to the side and maybe we'll pick that up one day. That's one thing I've done with this podcast. It's iterative and we continue to learn and grow. And, one day we'll be on YouTube and one day we'll be on more platforms, but today is not that day. And, we're grateful for where we're at and for the conversations we have. But I love that you're taking this iterative approach. No matter how big your business is, I think that makes a lot of sense. How do we take it one step at a time? Because we're going to learn each and every step of the way. So by the time we get to some of these platforms, the likelihood for success is infinitely higher than had we jumped in. Finance will say, you don't have an ROI on this, you need to cut it. Where if you had iterated into that specific platform and approach, you may have had that ROI a little bit quicker and a little bit better by the time you got there. So Paul, I love this. So many good pieces of information. So many good insights. And again, these episodes are meant to be short. So we've come to the end of it all. But Paul, tell us how and where can people connect with you if they want to reach out?
Yeah. So I would be, I would be ashamed if I didn't give a quick plug for, of course, my company, 811 Group. We've got a wonderful foundation, 811 Foundation. You can find both of those on LinkedIn, as well as our 3 subsidiaries. That's Brooksource, our IT and engineering consulting and professional services. And then already mentioned MetaSource, their healthcare IT and professional services. And then last but certainly not least is Calculated Hire. So they're more the traditional core business roles. You need accounting, marketing, HR, you name it. I, do a lot of the content and help bring a lot of those stories to life through kind of like our own employees and helping bring their stories to life. Check out our LinkedIn, our Instagram, as I mentioned. Any of those websites, I'm sure you'll find some great stories, and I'd love to get an extra follower. Who wouldn't love that?
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. And we'll link to everything in the show notes so it's really easy for everyone to find it. But again, Paul, thanks for your time today.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.